Once upon a time, and long ago, there was a little girl called Red. Now, Red wasn't her real name, mind you, but that's what everyone called her because she loved the color red. Red loved red. Her toothbrush was red. Her backpack was red. Her pajamas were red. She wore red to school every day. Her favorite foods were strawberries and red apples, of course. Her favorite candy was sweet, tart, soft, and chewy ropes. She used to like Twizzlers, but ever since they came out with the chewy ropes, sorry, I got carried away there. Also, her favorite thing in the whole world was a special cape and a hood, which was of a style that was popular at the time called a riding hood. It was bright red, and her grandmother had made it for her, which is why she was often called Little Red Riding Hood, or Red Riding Hood for short, or Red, or sometimes just for the shortest. Red's grandmother lived in a house inconveniently located on the opposite side of a forest called Wolf Woods, where there lived close to 100 wolves, but Red wasn't afraid when she went to visit her grandmother. A clean, well-lit path cut through the forest to allow travel, and the wolves seldom ventured out far enough to interact with their human visitors. Usually. One day, Red's grandmother wasn't feeling so hot, so Red's mother asked her to take a basket of goodies through Wolf Woods to grandmother's house to cheer her up and maybe do some light housework while she was there, dishes, laundry, things like that. Red, whose best friend in the world was her grandmother, was more than happy to say yes and left as soon as she got back from school. Now, Red had made this trip a zillion times, and she always promised her mother that she would stay on the path and not wander into the woods. But we didn't know what was going on in the forest that very moment. Deep in the woods, the wolves were holding a meeting to talk about one of their members. "Step forward, young wolf," said Graybeard, the chief wolf. Young Wolf stepped forward as every eye of every wolf in his pack looked on. "You have not been doing your part of the work around here. We are a family. We are a wolf pack, and we all pitch in. Life is better for all of us that way. Life is better when we all do our part. It may have seemed to you that you were doing more work than everyone else, but believe me, there were plenty of others who were outworking you too. Have you anything to say in your defense before this council passes sentence?" "Yes, as a matter of fact, I do," said Young Wolf. "You're all weak. We are strong, fierce creatures. With the right motivation, we could rule the world. We could act with total impunity. But no, we have to be civilized, hold trials, call each other by our family name. Well, go ahead and pass your little fine on me. The worst you can do is kick me out of the pack, and I won't argue with you about that at all." Graybeard did exactly that. He banished Young Wolf from the pack. And when Young Wolf, who we'll call Wolf from this point on, was out of the pack, he simply started walking. He picked a direction and kept mumbling to himself and walking, and mumbling to himself and walking. He may not have known where he was going, but he sure knew he was hungry. And there was a certain kind of animal he'd always been eager to try. As he came upon the path, he saw one such animal walking along happily. Seeing his opportunity, the wolf leapt out at the animal and said, "Hello, little girl." Little Red Riding Hood, having always been polite, simply replied, "Hello, Mr. Wolf." She was always polite, but she really shouldn't have been talking to a stranger. "Where are you off to this fine day?" the wolf asked, being as charming as it's possible to be when you're a sinister, bloodthirsty monster. "I'm off to visit my grandmother, who's not feeling very well. She lives on the other side of the woods." "I'm sorry to hear that," the wolf said, "but look, if you continue on this path, it'll take you another half an hour, maybe longer, to get there. I can show you a shortcut through the woods." "No, sorry, Mr. Wolf, but I promised my mom I would stay on the path. Goodbye, Mr. Wolf." Now, before the wolf could think of anything else, Red Riding Hood skipped down the path. He was angry at himself, but then another idea came to him. The wolf ran so fast that he ran right into a tree and knocked a bird's nest off of the limb it was sitting on. The mama bird, who belonged to the nest, was furious because now she had to build the whole thing from scratch, which meant waiting another day to lay her eggs. She shouted after the wolf, "Hey, buddy, why don't you watch where you're going?" But the wolf didn't listen. When he arrived at grandmother's house, the wolf knew he'd need a plan to get through the front door. He came up with an idea, and he gave a knock. A woman's voice answered from the other side of the door. "Who is it?" she asked. "Good afternoon. Can I interest you in some Girl Scout cookies?" Trying his best to sound like a Girl Scout. "No, thank you," said Grandmother. The wolf thought for another moment, then knocked on the door again. "Who is it?" said Grandmother. "Pizza man," said the wolf, doing his best pizza delivery boy voice. "I didn't order a pizza," said Grandmother, wondering if the pizza had even been invented yet. What she should have been wondering is why there were so many people at the front door of a cottage way out in the middle of the forest. Finally, the wolf hit upon a winner. He knocked on the door. "Who is it?" "FedEx," he said. "I have a package for Grandmother," doing his best to sound like a FedEx person. "Oh, great. It must be that book I ordered," Grandmother said. "Just a minute. I'll let you in." The wolf held back a laugh as he heard Grandmother undo all 7 locks on her front door. When she opened the door, she was shocked to find not a FedEx guy, but a rather large, slobbering wolf with sharp teeth and claws standing tall up over her. Needless to say, but I will anyway, she screamed and ran away. The wolf was biting at her heels the whole way until Grandmother dove into the closet and locked the door behind her. The wolf banged on the door with all his might, but couldn't get through. Then he remembered Little Red Riding Hood. She should be arriving at any moment. If she saw the front door open and no sign of the grandmother, she'd get suspicious and probably call the police or something. So, thinking even more quickly than before, the wolf came up with a disguise. He got a robe and a cap and a pair of Grandmother's old grandmotherly-looking glasses. And with his clever disguise in place, he shut the front door, leaving it unlocked, climbed up into the bed, and waited for Red Riding Hood to show up. She did at last and knocked on the door. "Come in," said the wolf. Red came in thinking that Grandmother only sounded funny because she was sick and not because, well, she wasn't really her grandmother. But when she saw the figure lying on the bed, she knew at once that it was the wolf she had met on the road. Even though something didn't feel right, which usually means that something is wrong and you need to get out of there, she just kept right on going. Sometimes Red did things that just weren't very smart. This was one of them. Remember, if something doesn't feel right, there's probably something wrong going on, so get out of there. So Red, not being so smart, played along with the wolf's game and simply said, "Are you feeling any better, Grandmother?" The wolf, unaware that Red was on to him, said in a granny voice, "A little better, dearie." "Grandmother," said Red with fake shock, "what big eyes you have." The wolf said again, "All the better to see you, my dear." "Grandmother, what big ears you have." "All the better to hear you with, my dear." "And Grandmother, what a big mouth you have." "All the better to eat you with, my dear." And with that, the wolf forgot all pretense and dove at Red. Red screamed and ran to the closet, only to find it locked. She knocked and knocked and knocked, and her grandmother heard her voice yelling, "Help, help, he's after me." So Grandmother unlocked the door and let her grandchild in. The wolf pounded on the door, but Grandmother had locked it up right away, and now the wolf was furious. "Fine," he bellowed when he had grown tired of trying to break down the door. "You can't stay in there forever, and I will be right here waiting for you." To their horror, Red and Grandmother saw that the wolf was quite right. There was no food or water in the closet. They were trapped. But just then, when things looked saddest, a ray of hope fluttered past the window. The little mama bird whose nest the wolf had upset had rebuilt it and was now prepared to follow the wolf's trail and give him a piece of her mind. When she arrived at Grandmother's house and saw what was going on, she was horrified. She hated the thought of that horrible beast eating those 2 innocent people, so she flew off to find some help. She found help in the form of a hunter who was having a very bad day. He hadn't caught so much as a squirrel when the little mama bird fluttered in front of his face and explained to him what was going on. Eager to help and eager to look a little bit better in front of his hunter friends, the hunter followed the mama bird to Grandmother's house and knocked on the door. "Who is it?" barked the wolf, forgetting that he was not in his own house. Mr. Wolf, you may have already won $10 million, said the hunter, doing his best contest spokesman voice. Hunters are usually not all that great at voices, but the wolf bought it anyway and, eager to win $10 million, abandoned his place in front of the closet and went to answer the door, which proved to be the last thing that wolf ever did. Goodbye, Mr. Wolf. Goodbye. And so, it looks as though everyone will end up happily ever after. Grandmother got well again and decided to move closer to her family so Red wouldn't have to wander through the woods quite so much to come and see her. The fur of the wolf brought a handsome price to the hunter, who was forever grateful to Little Red Riding Hood and her entire family. And the little mama bird had 5 babies, all of whom grew up to be beautiful birds. And that's the end of our story. The story of Little Red Riding Hood.